Are you looking for 10 game-changing lessons that, as a new project manager, you need to know? Well, in this video, you'll learn to lead with clarity, reduce stress, and build real confidence from day one. Because chances are, if you just landed your first project management role, you may feel like everyone else has it figured out except you. But don't worry, you are not alone. Every great PM started somewhere, and that feeling of being in over your head and wondering, am I doing this right? Well, it's more common than you think. Hi, I'm Adriana Girdler. After decades of teaching professionals practical project management techniques, I've seen thousands of new project managers juggle competing demands and scramble for clarity. A lot of them doubted whether they'd ever feel truly confident in the role. Like them, you're probably juggling meetings, timelines, action items, and wondering when you're going to magically start feeling confident. But the truth is, confidence doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from learning through experience and having the right foundation. These lessons will help you lead with more clarity, less stress, and a whole lot more confidence. And make sure you stay with me to the end, because that's when I'll share the single most important mindset shift that will change how you think about confidence as a project manager. So let's get to it. Okay, first lesson. How can you steer a project forward when you don't have all the answers? One of the biggest mindset traps new project managers fall into is thinking they need to have all the answers. And let me be clear, you don't. You're not hired to be the technical expert or solution architect. You are here to guide the team, align efforts, and make sure the project stays on course. Your role is to create clarity, to define the goals, set the expectations, and get people moving in the same direction. It's not about knowing the ins and outs of every detail. It's about making sure those details are organized, tracked, and delivered at the right time. Now, I do remember my early years in my career when I used to work for organizations managing projects. Man, I used to worry someone would ask me a question and I just couldn't answer it. But the moment I shifted from trying to know everything to focus on connecting everything, let me tell you, things started to click. You are not supposed to carry the whole project on your shoulders. You're not. You're supposed to steer it. So start with structure. Tools like a project charter and a scope statement help you lead without guessing. And when you give your team a clear path forward and the space to fill in the gaps, you build trust, not pressure. Lesson 2, how do you avoid setting out on a project without clarity on where you're headed? If you're managing a project without a solid project charter, you're already at a disadvantage. It's like setting out on a road trip without knowing where you're going, who's coming with you, or what vehicle you're driving. The project charter is where you get clear on the why behind the work. It outlines the purpose of your project, your key deliverables, success criteria, stakeholders, and high-level risks. But just as important and often overlooked, it helps you clarify priorities. In fact, I will often include a priority matrix right in the charter. It's one of the most useful tools for identifying what's fixed, what's flexible, and where you need to negotiate. Because you're always balancing 3 priorities: scope, time, and budget. I can't count how many times I've been brought in to help clean up a struggling project, only to find there was no shared understanding of what the project was actually meant to achieve. Or worse yet, 5 different versions of the goal were floating around in different people's heads. That you can't run a project like that. When you build a solid charter, you're creating alignment, you're setting expectations, you're giving your team and your stakeholders a clear, shared starting point. And let me tell you, that's powerful. So don't skip the charter. Even if your organization doesn't require one, make it a habit. And if you're not sure how to build one, that's one of the first tools I teach inside my SLAY project management course. Because the fastest way to feel in control of your project is to start with clarity. And that starts in your charter. Quick heads up before we move on. If you're looking for more structure and support as you get started in project management, well, I've got a free webinar that is perfect for you. It walks you through the key steps to set up your projects with clarity and confidence. Even if you're a brand new project manager, you'll find the link to the webinar below. It's a great next step if you want to feel more prepared, more control, and less overwhelmed right from the start. Lesson 3, how can you navigate tough conversations as a project manager? Let's be honest, nobody enjoys having difficult conversations. Whether it's pushing back on a stakeholder's request, addressing a missed deadline with a team member, that sucks, or flagging a budget concern with your sponsor, it could be tempting to just hope the problem resolves itself. But avoidance doesn't solve issues. It actually delays them. And in my experience, it usually makes everything worse. So as a project manager, your role isn't to avoid conflict. It's to navigate it with professionalism and clarity. And here's something I've always remind new project managers. You don't have to take sides. One of your most important skills in project management is the ability to remain neutral. You're not there to blame anyone. You're there to protect the project. That means staying calm, sticking to facts, and helping people focus on solutions. So let's go through a few examples of how tough conversations actually show up and how you can handle them. So let's say a team member has missed a deadline and it's impacting the rest of your timeline. Instead of avoiding it or jumping with frustration, you might say, "Hey Jane, I noticed that the deliverable for such and such task didn't come through on Thursday as scheduled. Can we talk about what happened there? I'd like to understand if there's a roadblock that we can remove and how we actually can adjust everything to keep the timeline on track." Or let's say a stakeholder wants to add something new mid-project. Okay, that happens a lot. Instead of instantly saying yes, you may want to say, "Hey, thanks for bringing that up. It sounds like a valuable addition. Let's look at the scope and the timeline together and see what it would take to include it. If it's a priority, we may need to shift something else or go through our change control process." I'll talk more on this in a bit. One of your best allies in these conversations is documentation. Your scope statement, your timeline, and your action plan aren't just tools for planning. They are tools for grounding difficult discussions. When someone challenges or changes a decision or disputes responsibility, you can refer back to what was agreed upon without making it personal. But tough conversations aren't just about policies and plans. They're also about soft skills. Active listening, empathy, and curiosity go a long way. Sometimes the issues isn't the task. It's that someone feels unheard or overwhelmed or disconnected from the goal. For more on dealing with those kind of challenges, check out my video on the topic. Go to the YouTube search bar and type in Adriana Girdler, active listening. Now, above all, remember not to delay tough conversations. Address issues early and use your documentation to stay grounded. Focus on facts, stay neutral, and lead with curiosity. The sooner you step into these conversations, the more trust and forward momentum you'll build on your projects, even when the topic is uncomfortable. Okay, next, how can we involve stakeholders early to ensure they support you as a project manager? One of the most common things I see on struggling projects are stakeholders who weren't brought in early enough or clearly enough. Maybe they were CC'd on an email. Maybe they sat in on one meeting, but they weren't fully aligned on what was happening, why it mattered, or what role they were expected to play. And then halfway through the project, they come in with feedback, changes everything, or worse, they push back on a decision that was made weeks ago, and now you and your team are scrambling. So let's back up for a second. Who are your stakeholders? Stakeholders are anyone who has an interest in or is affected by your project. That can include your sponsor, your client, department leads, subject matter experts, the end user of what you're delivering, even other project teams that depend on your results. And of course, your project team as well. Some stakeholders have the authority to make big decisions, while others simply need to stay informed. But all of them need to be identified and managed with intention. As a new project manager, Your job isn't to keep everyone happy. Your job is to bring stakeholders into the planning process early, help them understand what is being asked of them, and keep them informed on the right level throughout the project. What you need to do is map out your stakeholders during the planning phase. Clarify who needs to be informed, consulted, or directly involved. And don't just assume people will speak up. Create space for their input before decisions get locked in, because it's a lot easier to get alignment early than to undo any misunderstandings later. Lesson 5. This one's really important. Why is a scope statement the project manager's best friend? If there's one document that can protect your project from spiraling out of control, it is your scope statement. I want you to think of it as your anchor, the place where you can clearly define what's in, what's out of your project. Now, here's what happens without it. People start making assumptions. Oh, you don't want that. Stakeholder casually suggests a new feature. A team member adds an extra deliverable, just in case. And before you know it, your timeline is slipping, your budget is stretched, all because there was no clear scope statement to hold the line. Now, that's why I always say your scope statement isn't just a formality. It's a boundary setting tool. It gives you the authority to say, hey, that's not part of this project, but we can evaluate it through our change control process. And yes, you want to introduce that process right from the beginning. Change control isn't about saying no to every change. It's about evaluating requests in a structured, transparent way so your team isn't constantly reacting. It protects your timeline, your resources, and your sanity. So take the time to create a clear scope statement and communicate it to your team and stakeholders, along with introducing and explaining the change control form. When everyone's clear on the boundaries and the process for requesting change, I'll tell you, your entire project will run more smoothly. Let's dive into lesson 6 and look at how do you effectively break down project work before building a list of tasks. One of the biggest mistakes new project managers make is jumping straight into task lists before they fully understand the work. I know it's tempting, especially when deadlines are tight, but if you don't break the work down first, you'll end up missing key pieces or assigning tasks before you even have the full picture. That's where the work breakdown structure, or WBS, comes in. It helps you take large, complex deliverables and break them down into smaller, more manageable buckets. You're not assigning tasks yet. You're just making sure you understand all of the moving parts. I always recommend working with subject matter experts to build out the WBS. Their insight helps you avoid blind spots and ensures you're not overlooking anything critical. Now, once the WBS is built, you can use it to guide your action plan, assigning ownership, estimating time, and planning your schedule with confidence. Now, here's the bonus. When your team is involved in building the WBS, they feel more connected to the work. They help shape the plan. They're not just executing it. And let me tell you, that makes a big difference in team engagement and, more importantly, accountability. So don't skip the breakdown step. It's a crucial part of planning. Without a clear breakdown of the work, your plan is just a guess. And when you take the time to build your WBS collaboratively, you set your team and the project up for smoother execution. Next up, how can you embrace the highs and lows of project management and learn from both? One of the biggest surprises for new project managers is all the emotional ups and downs that come with the role. One day you're celebrating a major milestone, everything is working, the team is in sync, and you feel like a rock star. And then the next day, key deliverable falls through, a stakeholder throws you a curveball, and you're wondering if you're even cut out for this. Here's the truth. That's normal. Being a project manager means riding the highs and the lows, often in the same week. The job is deeply rewarding, but it's also demanding. You're the one holding everything together, which means when things go wrong, you feel it first. But it also means when things go right, you get to see the positive impact of your leadership in action. Early in my career, when I was managing projects and organizations, I had projects where everything clicked, the team was collaborative, the plans held, and the results were better than expected. But I also had projects where I felt like a punching bag managing last-minute changes, dealing with tension between departments, and absorbing pressure from all sides. If you're feeling that already, don't panic. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're in the middle of it. And that's exactly where project managers grow. So normalize those highs and lows. Use the good days to build team culture, recognize process, and reinforce what's working. Use the hard days to practice problem solving, communication, and leadership under pressure. And most importantly, reflect after your project. What would you repeat? What would you change? That's how you turn experience into wisdom fast. Lesson 8, why is a good project plan more than just a timeline? When people hear project plan, they often picture a timeline schedule like a Gantt chart with bars and dates. And while timelines, believe you me, are important, a true project plan involves much more than just a schedule. It includes key documents like your project charter, scope statement, and work breakdown structure. And when you create it properly, you can use your project plan as a communication tool, a coordination system, and a decision-making guide. That's why I always recommend creating your high-level schedule after your project charter, scope statement, WBS, and action plan are in place. That way, you're mapping out your schedule based on real input, not best guesses. Tools like Gantt chart are great for visualizing your schedule, identifying those overlaps, and seeing where things may need to shift. But remember, the goal of using them isn't to lock everything in. It's to give your team a shared reference point they can rely on as the work progresses. Now, build your plan around the real flow of work, not just deadlines, because a plan that looks good on paper is not enough. It has to work in the real world with real people. And when you're under pressure, that is one of the reasons I walk you through how to combine your charter, your WBS, and risk planning in my Slay Project Management course, because you need to build a plan that actually holds up, and your timeline only works if it reflects reality. That means planning with input from your team, factoring risk, understanding dependencies, and allowing for flexibility. Lesson 9, don't worry about being the expert. Here's something that takes a lot of pressure off new project managers. You don't need to have all the technical answers. You just need to know how to get them. Your real value isn't in solving every problem yourself. It's in asking great questions, connecting the right people, and making sure decisions flow through the project. That's how you unlock momentum and avoid costly delays. So let's say you're managing a marketing campaign launch. You don't need to write the copy or even design the visuals, but you do need to ask, are we waiting on final approval before we can go live? Or is the email list ready for QC before we schedule the send? It's these kinds of questions that help you spot delays, catch gaps in the plan, keep things moving. Think of it this way. You're the conductor, not the violinist. You may not play every instrument, but you need to know when someone's offbeat and what the group needs to stay in sync. So stay curious, take notes, circle back, and don't pretend to understand it all. Ask until you do. Your job isn't to have all the answers, it's to bring the right people into the conversation and to ensure that your experts know what they're supposed to do. And don't forget, your skill set is unique. There's reasons that you have subject matter experts and they're not managing the project. You bring the coordination, the structure, the risk awareness, and the ability to keep everyone aligned. That's not a side role, that's leadership. So own it. Okay, lesson 10, it's our final lesson. Yay! How can you grow your confidence without chasing perfection? Let me tell you, confidence does not come from having the perfect plan, running the perfect meeting, or from delivering a flawless project. It comes from doing the work again and again and again. It comes from seeing how projects unfold, making mistakes, yes, learning from them, and doing it better the next time. When you're new, everything feels big. Every stakeholder email, every meeting agenda, every scheduling decision feels overwhelming. But over time, those things get easier, not because the work changes, but because you do. You get faster at spotting the red flags. You get clearer in your communication, and you get more grounded in your decisions. And no, you won't do it perfectly every time. None of us do. But you'll learn, you'll grow, and eventually you'll find yourself coaching someone else through the same things you once struggled with. And that's when it all hits you. You'll find yourself thinking, hey, I got this. Remember that mindset shift I promised you at the start? Well, here it is. You don't need to wait to feel confident before you act like a project manager. You become confident by acting like one consistently, imperfectly, and with the willingness to keep showing up. So give yourself permission to be new, show up prepared, reflect often, and ask for feedback. And keep going, because every project you manage is building your confidence through practice, not perfection. Now, don't forget to save your seat for my free project management training. In it, I'll walk you through the 5 key elements that help new and experienced project managers master their projects and dramatically improve their success rates. I'll place the link below. It's a great next step if you feel ready and to be more confident and in control on every project you lead. And of course, if this video helped you, be sure to hit the subscribe or check out the next video on project management fundamentals for new project managers. Remember, you don't have to figure it all out on your own. I'm here to help you grow into the project manager you are meant to be.